How's it going, everyone? This is Jack here with the Commander's Wire, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be focusing on pending wide receiver free agents that the Commanders could look to acquire in the 2026 offseason to pair with Terry McLaurin as well as Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane. We're going to be covering every move the Commanders make through the offseason, whether it's from free agency, the draft, as well as other coaching hires that our new defensive and offensive coordinators want to make. Everything, no matter what it is, we're going to be covering it here on the Commander's Wire. So with that being said, I'd appreciate it if you guys went down below, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to know when I post next. And that way, once I do post a video, you guys will be notified and you'll be able to watch content just like this on news, rumors, and other things regarding the Washington Commanders. Like I said before, this video is going to be on pending free agents the Commanders could look towards signing in free agency once the free agency date starts, which I believe is in early March. I know that we have a lot of wide receivers coming off the book, so we can definitely spend some money this offseason and getting some new targets for Jaden Daniels as well as for the rest of this offense. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Before we get started with the pending free agents, I'm going to go over the current wide receiver room that the Commanders have, and it's going to be quick because we only have 3 players that are signed to the active roster with the Washington Commanders. Number 1, we have Terry McLaurin, obviously our number 1 wide receiver. He's not going anywhere for the next couple years. And the other 2 being Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver out of Rice, entering year 3 of his rookie deal, and Jalen Lane, wide receiver out of Virginia Tech, entering year 2. Now, Luke McCaffrey is coming off of shoulder injuries, but I believe once he's back, he definitely could find a spot for himself on the Commanders' offense, whether it be coming off the bench as a potential wide receiver 4, rotating in, whether it be in the slot or even on the outside. I think his speed and versatility as well as his hands can definitely allow him to have a solidified spot with the Washington Commanders offense. On the other hand, Jalen Lane, he's had a lot of issues this past season, running around a 4.3 at the draft last season. He is definitely speedy when it comes to the ball in his hands. However, one issue is getting the ball into his hands, as he has had many drop issues over the course of the season. But I believe we found our guy when it comes to punt returns, kick returns, and I think that spot is not going anywhere. Wide receivers coming off the books for us, we have obviously Deebo Samuel. He's more of a gadget piece. He probably is looking toward his last major contract in the NFL, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking for 10, 15, maybe even $20 million from a team in free agency. And if that's the case, I don't think we should sign him at all. Though he has his strengths, I don't think that in the Commanders' offense, we will be able to use those strengths to the greatest extent to justify paying him $20 million a year. If he wants to come back for a cheap 1-year deal, maybe $5-6 million, I would be all in for that. I think he'd be great. He'd be a great wide receiver 4, coming in on special downs, jet sweeps, screens, stuff like that, that he could come in only on special downs, though not on every down type of player like Terry McLaurin is. Now, the next player I wanted to highlight is Noah Brown. I don't think he's going to be a Washington Commander this coming season. He has too many injuries. I think that he's talented. He'd be a great wide receiver 3 for us, but he's just getting injured all the time, and I don't think we should take a chance on him anymore. And lastly, former first-round pick Treylon Burks, who was picked up by the Washington Commanders during this season, and he's definitely made a splash. He made that really good catch against the Broncos, and I think that he has a lot of potential in the NFL, even with the Commanders. I think that the Commanders should bring him back. He's still very young, and maybe you can sign him to a 2-year deal, maybe pretty cheap, looking to spend $5-6 million a year. I think adding Treylon Burks to the wide receiver room once again would be very good for the Washington Commanders here in the 2026 season. Now, in previous videos, I also mentioned some other wide receivers. I'm going to summarize them now. However, I'm not going to go too much in depth on them. 3 of them being Brandon Ayuk, Keon Coleman, and Michael Pittman Jr. Obviously, the 49ers front office recently publicly stated that Brandon Ayuk most likely will not be on the 49ers roster anymore for the 2026 season, so I expect him to be cut here in the next couple weeks, and Brandon Ayuk would then be a free agent, and we could potentially sign him. However, I don't think that the Commanders would be looking to spend too much money to get Brandon Ayuk in the building. I think Brandon Ayuk may want to go somewhere on a deal that is $20-25 million a year, and I don't think that'd be very smart for the Commanders. We're already paying Terry McLaurin over $30 million a year. I don't think we can add another receiver like that. And on top of that, with all of his attitude issues, I don't think Brandon Ayuk would be the right player in the Commanders locker room. I know he has ties to Jaden Daniels as well as Adam Peters, but I think that the cons just outweigh the pros. The only way I see Brandon Ayuk coming to the Washington Commanders is, like I said, with Deebo Samuel. on a cheap prove-it deal, maybe for 1 year. We can get him in the building on pennies on the dollar and allow him to play with Jaden Daniels and prove once again that he is a top receiver in the league. And next, Keon Coleman and Michael Pittman. They're still under contract for their respective teams. However, there was some buzz about them getting cut. However, since then, I have not heard anything, so I don't think I'm going to go really in-depth on those players. Now, let's get right into the pending free agents that the Commanders could be looking towards in free agency to sign for the 2026 season. Like Michael Pittman, we're looking at a member of the Indianapolis Colts, and that's going to be Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce has made his bread and butter on the deep ball. He is able to take the top off the defense. I think he was one of the quickest players to reach 1,000 yards this season on the least amount of receptions. So every time he catches the ball, he's catching it downfield and getting as much yards as possible after the catch. I think Alec Pierce would be a great addition to the Washington Commanders organization. I think he'd be a great guy in the locker room, as well as allowing Terry McLaurin to be more of a route runner in the Commanders offense. I know Terry McLaurin could easily be in that deep threat role, but I think Terry McLaurin is way too talented to be just a one-trick pony. Terry McLaurin needs to be all over the field running all types of routes, and I think that adding Alec Pierce to the Commanders wide receiver room would be a very good option if that is possible. Now this season, Alec Pierce had a total of 1,003 yards on 47 receptions. Like I said, I think that may have been the least amount of receptions to get 1,000 yards in the NFL. He was formerly a second-round pick by the Indianapolis Colts in 2022, and he stands at 6'3", 211 pounds. He had 6 total touchdowns this season, and he averaged 21.3 yards per reception. So I think he'd be a great addition to the Washington Commanders. Allow the Commanders' offense to really take the top off whoever the opposing defense is, and just take this offense to the next level for the 2026 season. Now, next up, I have a personal favorite of mine being Romeo Doubs, formerly with the Green Bay Packers. I think he has a very similar role to Terry McLaurin. He can take the top off the defense on the deep ball, as well as he can run routes at a pretty decent level. However, I think Terry McLaurin is easily 10 times better than him. I think Romeo Doubs could just be a solid number 2 receiver in the Washington Commanders offense. This season for the Packers, Romeo Doubs caught 55 passes for 724 yards. He also had 6 touchdowns, and he had 13.2 yards per reception. I think Romeo Doubs would be a solid number 2 receiver on the opposite side of Terry McLaurin. He would probably make his money in the intermediate side of the field within 5 to 15 yards, running pretty simple routes that allow him to find weak zones in the defense, as well as maybe break away on man coverage. So I think Romeo Doubs would definitely be a solid receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin this offseason. Our next free agent candidate I have for the Washington Commanders would be former Giant Wandale Robinson. Wandale Robinson predominantly runs routes out of the slot, and I think he's one of the best to do it in the NFL. He definitely isn't on the scale of CeeDee Lamb or Rasheed Rice. However, I think he's pretty close to it. He runs routes well. I think he's pretty solid after the catch as well. He's speedy, he's shifty, he's able to break away from whoever's covering him and allow the quarterback to get the ball out of his hands quickly and find Wandale Robinson on short passes, whether it's on the outside or on the inside. Wherever he is, I think he'd be a great addition to the Washington Commanders. Standing at 5'8", 185, he caught 92 passes for 1,014 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he averaged just 11 yards per reception. So he's on the shorter side. However, we know that slot receivers tend to be very short, and he did have a lot of production this season. You could credit that to the unfortunate injury that Malik Neighbors had early in the season. I think that the Giants definitely had to rely on Wandale Robinson, especially after Cam Scatterbo also had an injury. They really had to rely on Wandale Robinson on the short side of the field, and that's probably why he had so many receptions and was able to rack up over 1,000 yards this season. I think that allowing Terry McLaurin to take the top off the defense would let Wandale Robinson sit on the short side of the field as a safety blanket for Jaden Daniels for the 2026 season. Now, next up, I have a former Chief being Tyquan Thornton. He's definitely a receiver, just like Alec Pierce, whose bread and butter is on the deep ball. Standing at 6'2", 185, he's about the same size as Romeo Doubs. He caught 19 passes for 438 yards and 3 touchdowns, with 23.1 yards per reception. Tyquan Thornton definitely did not have as much production as the other receivers I'm naming. However, he did have a lot more playing time at the beginning of the season when a lot of the starting receivers were injured, and he played less and less as the season went on. But I think that adding Tyquan Thornton to the Washington Commanders wide receiver room taking the spot of one Noah Brown would definitely be a very positive thing for the wide receiver room and for the Washington Commanders offense, allowing Tyquan Thornton to take the top off the defense and Terry McLaurin to be a route runner on the other side. I think that'd be a very productive thing for David Blount and the rest of the offensive side of the ball. And lastly, Rasheed Shaheed. He was a wide receiver with the Saints and was recently traded to the Seattle Seahawks at this year's trade deadline. I think you guys can tend to notice a pattern of these receivers. They're deep threats, they're speedy, they're quick, and they're able to take the top off the defense. And I think that was something that we really struggled with this past season. When Terry McLaurin was injured, when Noah Brown was injured, we really had to rely on Deebo Samuel to be this #1 receiver, especially even after Luke McCaffrey was injured. Deebo Samuel, Chris Moore. We added Treylon Burks, so I think was definitely a bright side, but we didn't really have a lot of NFL starting caliber receivers that were able to take the top off the defense, run good routes, and I think that should be a priority for the Washington Commanders, especially in the wide receiver room this offseason. So Rasheed Shaheed is standing at 6 foot 180 pounds. He caught 59 passes for 687 yards and 2 touchdowns, but for only 11.6 yards per reception. I think Rasheed Shaheed would definitely be one of the faster wide receivers that are signed with the Washington Commanders, if he does sign with us, right beside Jalen Lane. However, I think Rasheed Shaheed definitely has better hands than Jalen Lane, and would be a good addition whether he's playing from the slot or the outside, either getting downfield quick or getting away from whoever's guarding him. I think he'd be a great addition to this Commanders offense. There definitely are more receiver free agents that are out there. However, these are just guys that I personally would like the Commanders to look at and potentially add to this Commanders offense. None of them are definitely our showstoppers. However, we already have that showstopper in Terry McLaurin, who will be this team's #1 wide receiver for the next couple years. So let me know down in the comments, do you guys like these receivers in free agency? Let me know which receiver that you guys want to target, whether it be in free agency, in the draft, or maybe even in a trade. Just let me know down below. And while you're down there, go ahead and just drop a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to know when I post next. I really do appreciate it, and you guys will be notified of all videos just like this in the near future. I appreciate you guys watching until the very end. God bless, and hail to the Commanders.